Hey everybody, welcome back to our next video as we continue our ongoing exploration of many different things church. If you've been following along through the course of this program year, you know we're doing a lot of different things, sometimes Bible verses, sometimes stories, sometimes hymns, sometimes themes, sometimes seasons of the church year, many different things that we've been doing as we are working through Lent. We are looking at different stories and characters and individuals who are experiencing some sort of brokenness and then the ways that they encounter God in the midst of it. This week, this time around, we are looking at the story of Jesus' encounter with the Syrophoenician woman who is seeking healing for her daughter. This story is found specifically in Mark chapter 7, verses 24 through 30. More on that in just a second. I want to make a couple of quick announcements. 2 weeks ago, if you caught that video, I mistakenly identified Naomi and that story that came out of the book of Ruth, along with the ongoing Lenten theme or the weekly theme of desperation, which was incorrect. That should have been that she was broken by grief because of the many different deaths that occurred in and around her. This week, the story of the encounter with the Syrophoenician woman and Jesus, this is the one that should be based on desperation, her desperation to seek healing for her daughter. More on that in a bit. So just wanted to clarify that. To begin with, I want to talk some about the title Syrophoenician and where that comes from and what this kind of implies in terms of location and cultural situations and kind of all the above. So some background on that, and then we'll talk a little bit about the story. Syrophoenicia is a Roman province within the greater Roman Empire, of course. Some scholars have suggested that the province itself is the province of Syria, which would go on eventually to become the nation of Syria, or at least portions of it would, along with Phoenicia being a smaller region within the province. If this is in fact the case, this would be similar in scope to the idea of how Galilee is a part of the larger nation of Israel, or it's a region within Palestine, if we want to call it that way. So that is one comparison. And if we were to bring it more modern times here around us in Underwood, think about the idea of a county within a state. So we're in Pottawatomie County. That's a smaller portion of the larger state of Iowa. Kind of seems like maybe this idea that Phoenicia is a portion of Syria, and then within that, so Syria, Syrophoenicia, Syrophoenician. Okay, so there's some background on that. Then additionally, as we zero in a little bit more, we hear about the town or the city or the community of Tyre. Tyre is a city that's in that region that is along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. It's just to the north of what we would consider to be Israel. If you were to look at a map of present day Israel, there's a city right along the edge of the Mediterranean Sea called Haifa. There's kind of as you go up the coast, there's almost like this little internal curl thing that happens, and Haifa is right there. Haifa is a very new city. It was not around in the time of Jesus, but it is there now. And Tyre, where the community of Tyre is about 40 or so miles farther up the coast. Oftentimes in different places, and actually immediately right after this story, we hear Tyre partnered up with also the city of Sidon. Sidon is another city right along the coast, maybe another 20 or 25 miles farther north up the coast from Tyre. So when we hear about the region or the area surrounding these two cities, oftentimes we'll hear the region of Tyre and Sidon. It's considered to be Gentile territory, though there were very likely Jewish people that lived in these various different communities. And this particular story that we have very likely took place within the home of a Jewish individual or family that lives there in Tyre. Additionally, this has been suggested. I don't necessarily have a lot of backup to this, but this is something that I read that might kind of feed into some of the animosity that seems to occur between. Some scholars have suggested that there might be an economic connection between the cities and Israel, or in the very least Galilee, where agriculture would be more prevalent simply because of the terrain. It's a little bit more agricultural friendly in Galilee. but that the Galilean crops would be sent to the cities to provide for the Romans who lived there. So again, that's speculation. I don't have a lot of backup for that. But again, as we see some animosity, or we infer some animosity within this story amongst the cultures, that might be part of it explaining why. Might be. Okay, now let's dive into the story. This story is not unique to Mark. It is also found in Matthew, though Luke and John do not feature it. So it's in Matthew and Mark. The setting is the same. Matthew does specify it's in the region of Tyre and Sidon. Some manuscripts of Mark, you'll also see Sidon, usually with a footnote saying just Tyre, but it seems to be the same setting. Within Matthew's gospel, the woman is identified as a Canaanite rather than a Syrophoenician woman. This still indicates that she is a Gentile, but it's a little bit more ambiguous as to her nationality. Canaanite would have really been an older term, specifying the inhabitants of Israel, of the Promised Land, when the Israelites came into the Promised Land, going way back to Old Testament times. So a little bit odd that Matthew calls her a Canaanite, but either way, it's indicating that she is a Gentile. Another difference, Matthew actually specifies that the disciples are present. Mark does not. It's actually, in Matthew's account, it's the disciples that first approach Jesus with this issue with the Syrophoenician woman, or with the woman, because she is bugging them and she won't leave them alone. And so they go talk to Jesus. Now, Jesus resists the disciples' plea for her, stating that he is there to serve the children of Israel, or the sheep of Israel. So that Matthew kind of includes that little other portion that Mark doesn't necessarily. But beyond that, the stories are pretty similar. Both include the troublesome response that Jesus issues to the woman's request of throwing food to the dogs. Scholars have offered a lot of different explanations to what might be going on there to try and kind of soften the oddity of what Jesus says to this woman. I don't like letting Jesus off the hook. I can't explain it away. I don't know what Jesus is thinking and why he makes this response to her. I don't like it. But sometimes the Bible is messy, and encounters between people are messy, and encounters that cross boundaries are messy. And so maybe this is just an example of that these encounters can be messy. But going on, the woman's persistence, which Jesus recognizes as faith, and he says that in Matthew, again, not in Mark, but her persistence is rewarded, and she gets her miracle. Now, some thoughts about the miracle itself. It's almost an afterthought, if you notice that, but it does happen. The miracle seems almost passive, and I say almost because I think we only have one example of a truly passive miracle, and that's when the woman that's been bleeding for 12 years touches Jesus' cloak without him even being aware of it, and then the power goes out of him and into her, and she is healed. So that one's passive. Jesus does not intend for that one to happen. He takes no action on that one. But this one, I say it's almost passive, and really it's because of it's almost a throwaway comment, and it happens from a distance. Some interesting things that also apply to this particular miracle. It's accomplished without Jesus actually having physical contact with the individual. There's not a lot of examples of miracles of healings in which that's the case. And it's done for another person. This one is done for the benefit of the mother, and not necessarily for the benefit of the daughter. Now, these two significant situations overlap. There are 3 examples of miracles without Jesus providing physical contact. One is the healing of the centurion's servant. Then there's this one, and then there's the cleansing of the 10 lepers. And the centurion servant, and then this one with the Syrophoenician woman. These are also 2 examples of when the miracle is done for another person, either by a request or out of compassion for that person, someone else is healed. Additionally, a couple other examples of miracles done for other people. We have the raising of the son of the widow of Nain, one of only 3 examples of when Jesus actually resurrects someone. That one seems to be done for the benefit of the mother again. And then the healing of the man who is paralyzed due to the faith of his friends who tear a hole in the roof and lower him down through to get to Jesus. He heals the man on account of the faith of his friends. So we do have a couple examples of those, but those are rare. Now, again, to wrap this up, the theme of this story this week is desperation. The woman is desperate to have her daughter healed of this unclean spirit. And she is willing to cross all kinds of boundaries in order to accomplish that. She crosses cultural boundaries. She crosses culture. I'm getting tongue-tied. She crosses cultural boundaries, gender boundaries, possibly economic boundaries, considering what I had mentioned as a speculation before. It's almost certainly religious boundaries. She crosses all kinds of boundaries because she recognizes the possibility that if anyone is going to be able to help her daughter, it's going to be this guy that she has heard about. And she's desperate to have her daughter be freed of whatever this demon is that has possessed her. So that leaves me with a final question that I'm going to leave you with as you get into your conversation, your discussion. What might be those things that will make us desperate enough to seek out help without hindrance, even though there might be boundaries that we're going to cross in order to seek that help? What makes us that desperate? Have a great discussion. We'll catch you next time.